Daniel had always lived a quiet life, far from the noise of towns, far from the arguments and fast talk of city people, and far from anyone who wanted to trouble him with things he did not understand. His ranch sat in a wide open space of dry grass, tall cottonwood trees, and long fences he had built himself over the years. He was used to doing everything alone. When the sun rose, he worked. When the night came, he rested. He had always believed that life was simple if a man stayed honest and minded his own business. But life sometimes changed its own rules without asking anyone. On a warm afternoon, while Daniel was fixing a broken fence near the edge of his land, he heard the sound of a wagon wheel dragging across the rocky ground. He straightened up and wiped his hands on his work shirt. At first he thought it might be someone from town, but when he stepped closer to the road, he saw an Apache family slowly making their way toward him. The wagon leaned to one side, one wheel badly damaged. The horses looked tired. Inside the wagon sat an older woman with long braided hair, wrapped in a blanket, though the day was warm. She had a calm and strong presence, the kind that spoke more through silence than words. Walking beside the wagon were 3 young women, her daughters, all carrying baskets and helping guide the horses. Daniel could tell right away that they were in trouble. The wheel had cracked and could no longer turn properly. The family had been forced to stop again and again, pushing and pulling the wagon forward instead of riding it. The older woman lifted her hand in a polite greeting, and Daniel nodded back, feeling an immediate sense of respect for her. He walked toward them slowly, making sure they knew he meant no harm. He could see the worry on the daughters' faces. They were far from their village, and the broken wheel was not something they could fix with the tools they carried. Daniel pointed to the wheel and asked gently, "You need help?" The older woman looked at him with steady eyes. She understood enough English to know what he meant. She nodded once, but there was a depth in her nod Daniel did not understand. One of the daughters, the eldest, stepped forward and tried to explain the situation in simple words. "Wheel. Broken mother. Tired. We need place to stop. Maybe fix." Daniel felt a pull of responsibility. He had been taught as a boy that if someone needed help, you helped them not because you had to, but because it was the right thing to do. He walked around the wheel, studied the wood, touched the cracked spokes, and saw that it would take a few hours to repair. "I can fix it," he said. "Bring your wagon near my fence. There's shade." The family looked relieved. The older woman lowered her head in gratitude. Daniel felt a strange sense of warmth from the simple gesture. He guided them to a shaded area near his barn. The daughters helped pull the wagon while Daniel brought his tools, a hammer, strong nails, some extra wood, and rope thick enough to tie everything together. While he worked, the daughters gathered water from his well and gave it to the horses. The youngest daughter tried to talk to him with small, shy words and a gentle smile. The middle sister stayed quiet, but watched him closely as if studying the way he worked. The eldest helped him whenever he needed an extra hand. The older woman sat under the tree, watching everything with a calm and thoughtful expression. Daniel noticed how protective the daughters were around her, how they made sure she was comfortable, how they spoke to her with deep respect. He admired that silently. After some time, Daniel finished fixing the wheel. It wasn't perfect, but it was strong enough to carry them safely for many miles. When he stood up and wiped sweat from his neck, the eldest daughter smiled in relief. "You saved us. Thank you." Daniel tried to wave away the praise. It was nothing. Anyone would have done it. But the older woman looked at him in a way that suggested it wasn't nothing. She slowly stood up and walked toward him. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, a gesture of gratitude and respect in her culture, and spoke a few words in Apache. Her voice soft, but heavy with meaning. Daniel didn't understand the language, but he understood kindness. He nodded because he didn't want her to feel rude. That simple nod changed everything. The eldest daughter stepped closer. She seemed to wait for something, as if expecting Daniel to say more. But when he only smiled politely, she whispered something to her mother. The older woman nodded, and they exchanged long looks among themselves before turning back to Daniel. They stood together with a kind of quiet seriousness that made Daniel feel slightly uneasy, though he didn't know why. He thought maybe they were waiting to offer payment, so he shook his head and raised his hands. No, no, you don't owe me anything. I'm just glad I could help. The mother smiled, gentle but certain. She said more words in Apache, and though Daniel could not understand them, the tone felt like a blessing. Her daughters stood behind her, heads bowed slightly. Daniel felt something important was happening, but he didn't know what. He simply nodded again, respecting whatever meaning they held dear. The mother placed her hand on her heart, then pointed at her eldest daughter, then at Daniel. The gesture was slow, meaningful. The eldest daughter lowered her eyes shyly. Daniel thought she was just thanking him again. He nodded once more, trying to show respect, unaware that in their culture, that gesture meant acceptance of an agreement. The moment passed softly but deeply for the family. To them, Daniel had just agreed to something large, something that touched tradition and family honor. To Daniel, he had simply shown good manners. After thanking him again, the family prepared to leave. The older woman touched his hand once more and gave a warm smile that held far more meaning than Daniel realized. The daughters waved politely, and the wagon rolled forward, now moving smoothly on the repaired wheel. Daniel watched them go, feeling good that he had helped people who clearly needed it. He wiped his hands on his shirt and returned to his fence repair, not knowing that the simple gestures he had made, gestures meant only as kindness had been understood as something much deeper by the Apache family. As the sun dipped lower and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Daniel felt satisfied with the day. He believed the family would reach their village safely. He believed the mother's smile was simply appreciation. He believed the nod he gave was nothing more than politeness. He believed life would continue as quietly as before, but the world had changed without telling him. In a distant place, the mother and her daughters discussed his kindness, his respectful nod, and the meaning of the words he did not understand. According to their tradition, the mother explained, when a man helped in such a way and accepted her gesture of unity, he was offering his heart to her daughter. When he nodded, he accepted her daughter's future with him. And because he had not spoken against the custom, he had also agreed to shelter the other two daughters until they found homes of their own. Daniel had walked away believing nothing had changed. The Apache family rode away believing everything had changed. And so, a simple act of kindness, a repaired wagon wheel, and a polite nod set the stage for a story Daniel never expected to be part of. His quiet life was already shifting, though he could not yet feel it. He did not know that very soon the same three daughters he helped that day would stand at his gate. He did not know they would arrive carrying bags, hope, and a promise he had unknowingly made. He only knew the sun was setting, and tomorrow would be another ordinary day. But the world had already chosen otherwise. Daniel woke up the next morning thinking the day would be calm and predictable, just like most mornings on his ranch. He fed the horses, checked the water trough, and walked the long fence line with a cup of warm coffee in his hand. The quiet sunrise felt peaceful. Birds sang softly in the cottonwood branches overhead, and a cool breeze moved through the grass. Daniel had no idea that this peaceful morning was the last normal one for a while, as the sun rose higher. Daniel finished his morning chores and walked toward the barn. That was when he heard something distant hoofbeats, steady and growing louder. He paused, unsure at first. Visitors were rare. His ranch was far from town, and people didn't simply drop by without a reason. He stepped out into the open and shaded his eyes to see down the long dirt road. 3 riders appeared at the far end, moving slowly toward his gate. At first he didn't recognize them because of the distance, but as they came closer, he felt a jolt of surprise. It was the 3 Apache sisters he had helped the day before. They weren't in their wagon this time. Each sat on a horse, and each carried a bag tied behind the saddle. The bags looked full, as if packed for a long journey. Daniel frowned slightly, confused. They seemed calm, but serious. This didn't look like another small favor. Something important was happening. He stepped forward as the sisters approached the gate, dismounted, and stood quietly in front of him. The eldest sister stepped forward first. She held her bag in one hand and looked at him with steady eyes full of meaning. "We are here," she said in careful English. "Mother said you." "Agreed." Daniel blinked. "Agreed to what?" The eldest sister exchanged a look with the middle one, then opened her hands in a way that suggested something large and important. Mother said, "You accepted." "The arrangement? What arrangement?" Daniel asked, feeling uneasy now. The youngest sister suddenly smiled brightly, as if she believed this was a joyful day. She lifted her bag with both hands and spoke with excitement in her voice. "We come to your home. You give us shelter. You take us in." Daniel's confusion deepened. "Shelter? Why?" The middle sister finally spoke, her voice soft. "Our mother said you agreed to take one sister as wife. And tradition says the man must protect the other sisters too until they marry." Daniel felt the world tilt beneath him. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He had thought he was only fixing a wagon wheel. He had thought his nod was just politeness. He had thought the mother's gentle hand on his arm meant nothing more than thanks. But to them, it meant something far bigger. He took a step backward and raised both hands in a gentle, apologetic gesture. "Wait, please. Hold on. I think there is some mistake. I didn't agree to marriage. I didn't understand the tradition." The eldest sister's expression changed. The bright hope in her eyes dimmed a little. She looked worried, as if she feared she had done something wrong. The youngest smile faded, and the middle sister lowered her head. The eldest tried again, as if maybe Daniel had forgotten. "You helped us. You let Mother touch your hand?" You nodded when she pointed. "That is the sign. That is the promise." Daniel felt a deep ache in his chest. He didn't want to embarrass them or make them feel unwanted. He could see how important this was to them. He could see how seriously they took tradition. He took a slow breath. "I didn't know. I'm sorry. I meant no disrespect to your family or your customs. I just didn't understand." The sister stood silently for a long moment. The eldest's eyes softened with sadness, but she didn't turn away. Instead, she placed her bag gently on the ground. "We traveled far. We told Mother we would honor her words. If we return without entering your home, we bring shame to her. Shame for misunderstanding. Shame for leaving without respect." Daniel felt his heart twist. He looked at the three sisters, tired from travel, hopeful, frightened, and trying not to show it. They didn't come out of force. They came because they believed he was an honorable man, a man who had kept a promise. He rubbed the back of his neck nervously. "I never wanted to harm your honor." The youngest sister stepped forward, her eyes wide and bright. "We can stay only for a short time," she said, trying to ease his worry. "Only until we understand what you decide. We trust you." Her simple words hit Daniel harder than he expected. Trust was something he valued deeply, and hearing that these three strangers trusted him made him feel responsible in a way he couldn't ignore. The middle sister spoke softly now. "If you ask us to leave, we will. But it will be hard to face our mother and say we did not even step inside the home of the man she believed accepted her gesture." Daniel exhaled slowly. He didn't know what the right answer was, but he knew what the decent answer was. He could not turn away three young women who had traveled all this way because they believed in him. Even if everything was a misunderstanding, he could not let them walk back feeling rejected and ashamed. "All right," he said quietly. "You can stay. For now. Just until we sort everything out. You can rest, eat, and decide what should be done next." Relief washed over all three sisters at once. Their shoulders relaxed, their eyes brightened, and their faces softened. The eldest sister bowed her head slightly. "Thank you. You are kind." The youngest clapped her hands together with joy. The middle sister touched her heart to show respect. Daniel opened the gate and gestured for them to follow him into the yard. They carried their bags and stepped inside with quiet footsteps. For a moment, Daniel felt like a man watching the beginning of a storm. He hadn't prepared for not a dangerous storm, but one that would change everything around him. He led them to the porch and helped them set down their belongings. The house felt strangely small with three people standing so close. The sisters looked around carefully, studying everything with interest and curiosity, without being asked. The middle sister went to the well and pulled up a bucket of fresh water. The eldest began sweeping the porch with a worn broom she found beside the door. The youngest started brushing dust off the chairs. In just a few minutes, they acted as if this was already their home, as if they wanted to help rather than cause him trouble. Daniel blinked in surprise. "You don't need to do that." The eldest sister looked at him and answered softly, "It is our way. If we stay in a man's home, we make it better, not heavier." Daniel didn't know how to respond. He just watched them work with quiet grace and skill. They moved smoothly, helping each other with gentle signals, almost like music without sound. The ranch, which had always felt plain and lonely, now seemed alive, filled with movement and purpose. After some time, he invited them inside and gave them a chance to rest. The sisters sat together on one side of the room, speaking in soft whispers. Daniel heated some food and served it to them. They accepted with gratitude and ate quietly, showing their good manners. As the day went on, Daniel tried to explain again that he had not meant to make any promise. The sisters listened with respect. None of them accused him or raised their voices. Instead, the eldest simply said, "We understand. But we are here now, and we believe we can solve this with honesty." Daniel nodded slowly. That part he understood well. Honesty had always guided him, and it would guide him now too. The sun began to set. The sisters sat near the fire, warming their hands and resting their tired feet. Daniel watched them in silence. They were peaceful guests, not demanding or loud. But their presence carried weight, not trouble, responsibility. He walked outside for a moment and looked at the long road stretching toward the mountains. The sky glowed with orange and purple colors. He felt the air getting cooler, and he felt something else too, a shift inside himself. He didn't regret letting them stay. He just didn't know what this unexpected path would lead to. One thing was clear. The sisters believed he was part of their future, and he realized he could not simply send them away. Not now. Not after seeing the trust in their eyes. He returned inside and saw the three of them resting peacefully. The ranch felt different, warmer, fuller. Daniel stood quietly, understanding for the first time that his life was no longer the same. He believed he had made a simple mistake, but it was already becoming something much bigger, something that would shape all their lives in the days to come. The next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual, expecting to find the ranch silent the way it always had been. But when he stepped outside, he stopped in surprise. The three sisters were already awake and working, each one doing something that made the ranch look strangely alive. The eldest sister was sweeping the yard with long, steady motions, moving dust and leaves into neat piles. The middle sister was carrying fresh water from the well in large buckets without spilling a drop. The youngest was feeding his chickens and talking to them softly as if they were friends who understood her. Daniel stood there for a moment, watching them. He felt something warm rise in his chest. For so many years, his ranch had been quiet, almost too quiet. Now it felt as if the place had started breathing again. When the sisters noticed him, they all paused and nodded politely. The eldest spoke first, as she usually did. "Good morning. We start early. We hope this is fine." Daniel nodded slowly. "You don't have to do all this." She smiled gently. "We want to. When we stay under someone's roof, we help with his home. It is our way." The middle sister stepped forward with a bucket of water. She set it down carefully and wiped her forehead. "We do not want to be a burden. This makes us feel useful." The youngest sister, cheerful as always, added, "We like helping you. This place is nice, but it needs more hands." Daniel almost laughed at that last part because she was right. A ranch was always hungry for work. But for years he had done everything alone. Seeing three people quietly fixing things, cleaning, and helping the animals made him realize how heavy the workload had always been. He thanked them gently and joined in, doing small repairs while they continued their tasks. Throughout the morning, he watched them work as if they had lived there for months instead of just a single night. The way they moved together, the way they communicated silently, and the way they respected the land reminded him of something he had forgotten: what it felt like to have company. Later in the day, when the sun grew warmer, the sisters joined him near the barn. They sat on a small bench while Daniel checked the saddle straps and cleaned his tools. The eldest watched carefully, interested in how he maintained his gear. She asked a few quiet questions, and Daniel answered them patiently. The middle sister listened without speaking much, but her eyes were thoughtful, as if she was trying to understand everything deeply. The youngest simply smiled at every little thing, finding joy even in small moments. For the first time, Daniel began to see each sister as her own person, not just a part of a misunderstanding. The eldest, Lonnie, was strong-minded and calm. She took responsibility naturally, like someone who had always supported her family. The middle sister, Taya, was gentle but observant. She often stayed quiet, but Daniel could tell she thought carefully about everything she said. The youngest, Nia, had a bright spirit that warmed everything around her. She found happiness in simple things and spoke with a mix of innocence and bravery. Daniel didn't know their names yet, but their personalities showed clearly even without words. As the day went on, the sisters cooked a small meal from the supplies they carried. They shared it with Daniel, insisting he take the first bite because he was the host. He felt shy accepting such care, but he didn't want to offend them. The food was simple but delicious, full of familiar spices used in their tribe. The youngest watched him closely, waiting for his reaction. When he nodded with a smile, she clapped happily. "Good? You like it?" "It's wonderful," Daniel said honestly. The sisters exchanged pleased glances and continued eating. After lunch, the middle sister surprised him by fixing a broken strap on his saddle using strong twine and quiet skill. Daniel watched with raised eyebrows. She didn't speak, but her hands moved smoothly, solving the problem faster than he expected. When she finished, she simply nodded and walked away. It was a small thing, but it touched him. Little moments like this kept happening throughout the day. Every time one of the sisters did something kind, helpful, or thoughtful, Daniel felt something shift inside him. He had spent so much time alone that he had forgotten the warmth people could bring just by being present still. The truth weighed on him. This was all happening because of a misunderstanding that he had not cleared up yet. They believed he had agreed to something important. They believed he had promised a future. Daniel felt guilty each time he looked at them, especially when he saw trust in their eyes. Later in the afternoon, Daniel gathered his courage to speak with them. He asked the sisters to sit with him under the shade of the largest cottonwood tree. They followed him quietly, sensing the seriousness in his voice. He took a deep breath. "I want to talk to you about what your mother believed." All three sisters looked at him with attention. "I need you to understand," he continued, "that I didn't know what those gestures meant. When your mother touched my hand and pointed at you, I thought she was showing thanks. I never meant to make a promise I didn't understand." The eldest nodded slowly. "We know now. That is why we do not push you," the middle sister said softly. "We do not want to cause trouble. We only want to respect our mother's words." The youngest looked down at her hands. "We thought you chose us, or one of us." Daniel felt his heart ache gently. They weren't angry. They weren't demanding. They weren't trying to trap him. They were simply trying to honor their mother's belief and their tribe's tradition. Their sincerity made his guilt feel even heavier. "I didn't choose," Daniel said carefully. "Not because I don't respect you, but because I didn't know I was being asked to choose anything." The eldest looked thoughtful. "Our mother said you are a man of good heart. She believed you understood her meaning. But now we see it was a mistake." There was no bitterness in her voice, no shame. Only a calm understanding. Daniel looked at them one by one, seeing how much courage it took for them to sit here and talk about such things. "Even if it was a mistake," he said slowly, "you're here now, and I'm not asking you to leave." The youngest head snapped up, her eyes bright. "Truly." "Yes," Daniel confirmed. "You came in trust, and you have shown nothing but kindness. Until we find a solution that makes sense for everyone, you can stay safely here." All three sisters relaxed at once. They didn't smile widely, but their shoulders loosened, and their expressions softened with relief. The eldest spoke quietly. "Thank you. You honor us with your kindness." Daniel didn't respond for a moment. He only watched them, realizing how much they had brought into his life in such a short time. As the sun began to set, Lonnie helped him gather firewood. Taya prepared the evening meal, and Nia hummed softly while feeding the horses. What had once been a lonely ranch now felt warm, busy, and full of gentle movement. Daniel knew everything was temporary, but he couldn't deny the comfort it brought. When night fell, the sisters sat near the fire while Daniel repaired a lantern. They talked in soft voices, sharing memories of their village. Daniel listened without interrupting, learning little pieces of their world, a world built on respect, family, tradition. He understood now why they had come with such faith. They came not because they wanted something from him, but because they believed they were honoring something sacred. Daniel looked at them through the warm flicker of firelight. He wondered what his life would look like tomorrow, or the day after, or the week after. He wondered how long they would stay, and what choices would come next. But for the first time in a long time, he did not feel alone. The misunderstanding that had brought them together was still unresolved, but in those simple moments, shared meals, shared work, shared silence, Daniel realized that the unexpected could sometimes feel strangely right. The next few days passed quietly on the ranch, but something was changing beneath the surface. Daniel could feel it in the way the sisters settled into the rhythm of his land, and he could feel it in his own thoughts. Every morning he awoke to the soft sounds of them working before sunrise. Every evening, he sat with them near the fire, listening to their gentle voices. The misunderstanding that brought them here still hung between them, but it no longer felt like a mistake that needed undoing. Instead, it felt like a path they had all stepped onto by accident, yet none of them truly wanted to leave. One morning, Daniel was repairing a fence post when he heard distant hoofbeats again. This time the sound was heavier, slower, and carried a weight that made him straighten immediately. He wiped his hands and walked toward the road. Soon, a tall Apache man on a strong horse came into view. His clothing and the symbols painted on his horse showed he was an elder, someone respected and trusted in matters of tradition. The sisters recognized him before Daniel did. They stood beside the house, whispering his name with surprise and worry. The eldest sister, Lonnie, stepped forward with a steady face, but Daniel could tell she was nervous. The elder dismounted quietly, his expression calm but serious. His eyes traveled from the sisters to Daniel, studying everything without speaking. Daniel approached with polite caution. "Good morning," he said, unsure what else to say. The elder nodded once. His voice was deep and measured when he finally spoke. "I am here because the mother of these young women sent word. She asked me to confirm the agreement made between you and her family." Daniel felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He glanced at the sisters, who stood silent but hopeful. Lonnie stepped closer, bowing her head toward the elder. "We told him the truth," she said softly. "He did not understand our mother's meaning." The elder looked at Daniel again. His gaze was not accusing, only watchful. "Tell me what you understood that day." Daniel took a slow breath. He had always valued honesty, and this was not the time to hide anything. "I saw a family in need," he began. "I helped fix your wagon. When your mother touched my hand and pointed at your daughter, I thought she was thanking me. I nodded because I wanted to show respect. I didn't know it meant anything more." The elder listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, he nodded slowly, as if fitting the pieces together in his mind. "No insult was meant?" the elder asked. "None," Daniel said firmly. "I would never disrespect your customs. I simply didn't know them." The sisters watched him with quiet hope. The youngest, Nia, pressed her hands together nervously. The middle sister, Tia, stood still, her eyes soft and anxious. The elder turned to them. "And you three came here because you believed the promise was made?" Lonnie spoke with calm honesty. "Yes, we did not force him. We came because Mother believed his nod was acceptance. We came because we wanted to honor her." The elder sighed gently. "Tradition carries weight, but so does truth." He looked back at Daniel. "Now you must decide what happens next." Daniel felt his heartbeat slow and deepen. This was the moment that had been building since the day he fixed that wheel. He thought of everything that had happened in the past days, the meals shared, quiet conversations, the gentle help they offered without asking for anything. He thought of how different the ranch felt, how much warmer and more alive each day had become. "I never meant to agree to marriage," Daniel said carefully. "But I also don't want them to leave in shame. They have brought nothing but kindness to my life. I want to do what is right." Taya's eyes glistened with emotion. Naya looked up with hope. Lonnie stood perfectly still, waiting. The elder nodded. "There is a way to honor everyone," he said. "Tradition does not force a man to marry without choice, only to speak clearly. You must give your truth. Then they must give theirs. Understanding can replace misunderstanding." Daniel looked at the three sisters. "What do you want?" he asked gently. The question surprised them. They exchanged glances. Lonnie stepped forward and spoke first. "We want peace," she said. "We want to respect our mother. We want to do what is right for you too." Taya's voice trembled slightly as she added, "We do not want to cause you trouble. We only want to find a home where we are safe and respected." Naya, the youngest, looked directly at Daniel. "And we want to stay," she said softly. "If you will let us." Daniel felt something warm and heavy settle in his heart. He looked at each of them, one by one, seeing not the confusion of a mistake, but the sincerity of three people who had trusted him from the beginning. "There is room here," he said gently. "Room for all of you. You may stay as long as you wish. You will be safe, respected, and welcome. I make that promise honestly, not because of a tradition I didn't understand, but because it is what I choose." The sisters exhaled together, a sigh full of relief and quiet joy. The elder watched calmly, his expression approving, but Daniel continued. "I do not want any of you to feel forced toward marriage because of a misunderstanding. If marriage ever happens, it should be something chosen freely, with trust and understanding, not because a gesture was misread." The elder smiled softly for the first time. "That is wisdom," he said. "And it honors our tradition more than silence ever could." Lonnie bowed her head. "Thank you," she whispered. "You honor us with your honesty." The elder turned to the sisters. "Then there is no shame in staying. You came in good faith, and he has answered in good faith." He placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You have acted with respect. That is all our people ever ask." With that, the elder mounted his horse again. Before riding away, he called out, "You have not broken our tradition. You have shaped it with truth." The sisters stood watching him disappear down the long road. When he was finally out of sight, they turned back to Daniel. Nia was the first to run forward, her smile wide with joy. She hugged him lightly, more like an excited child than anything else. Daniel patted her shoulder gently, surprised but touched. Tay approached next. She didn't say much, but her eyes shone with gratitude. She placed her hand over her heart in a gesture of deep respect. Daniel returned the gesture softly. Lonnie came last. She stood in front of him with calm dignity. "You gave us a place when you did not have to," she said quietly. "We will never forget your kindness." Daniel felt warmth rise in his chest. "You've given me something too," he said. "Company, peace, a home that feels alive again." The sisters spent the rest of the day working with lighter spirits. They sang softly while sweeping, laughed together while preparing food, and helped Daniel with the horses, as if the weight of uncertainty had lifted. The ranch seemed even brighter, as if the land itself recognized the new harmony. That evening, when the sun dipped behind the hills and painted the sky with soft colors, Daniel sat with the sisters by the fire. They shared stories, simple ones, about the land, their village, and Daniel's days growing up on the ranch. The night felt peaceful and warm, filled with gentle voices and the crackle of burning wood. Daniel realized something important then. What had begun as an accident had become something meaningful. The sisters no longer felt like unexpected guests. They felt like part of a small, growing family, one formed not through promises misunderstood, but through trust freely given for the first time in years. Daniel felt that his lonely ranch had turned into a home, and though none of them knew what the future would bring, they all understood one truth. Sometimes life chose a path for people, even when they didn't see it coming.